All right, I've got 11:05, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for joining us this morning. Most everybody was right on time, which is great. And I think we've got a group of Zoom aficionados. Everybody has kept the mute on, which is fantastic. We will have some times throughout the presentation this morning for some live Q&A. So until that time, we ask you that you keep yourselves on mute. If you're brave enough, if you want to, when we do our live Q&A, we'll change the screen and you can turn your cameras on, but you don't have to. That's fine. So thanks everybody. Welcome to our first public meeting for a capital project that we've done. You know, we've had to maneuver a little bit, as everybody has over the last several months. And we've used the time to look for ways to improve the way that we do some of our public engagement. And so we'll go through some of that today. And I believe you may have gotten some of that when you signed up for today through the public input website, which will continue to stay live, and you can continue to provide feedback through that. So what we wanted to talk about today is Irvins Creek Greenway, and this will be our first section of Irvins Creek Greenway from Idlewild Road to Lakeview Circle. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Katie Lloyd, who is Senior Planner for Capital Planning at Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation.
Thanks, Bert. So thank you again for joining us today. Bert gave a little introduction about this section of Greenway. As he mentioned, I'm a senior planner with Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation, and I'm joined by some of our design consultants, Kevin Westra and Jeff Asbow from Alfred Benesh and Company, as well as Brian Bennett, who is the project manager for Mecklenburg County Asset and Facility Management. Kevin and I are going to walk you through the presentation. I'm going to start with a little overview of our Greenway system, and then Kevin will talk specifically about this section of trail. Before we get started, I wanted to walk you through some of the features of our virtual meeting platform. It is important that everyone stays muted, as Bert said, throughout the presentation. If you haven't used Zoom before, you will notice at the bottom left of your screen a little microphone. Make sure that there's a red line in the microphone, and that indicates that you're muted. There's also the chat feature, which is a little box at the bottom if it's not up already. And we wanted to take the time to experiment with our chat feature and ask you guys a question. If you guys wouldn't mind, write your name, your zip code, and then your favorite place to walk or bike today into the chat feature, and it'll be a way that we can test out the chat. During the presentation, you'll also be able to provide any comments or questions for the Q&A at the end. So let's take a second and go ahead and test out the chat.
I figured we might have some early risers on here that have already spent some time out on the Greenway. We've got a McAlpine Creek Greenway, a 4 Mile Creek, a 6 Mile Creek Greenway, Colonel Francis Beatty Park, Little Sugar Creek Greenway, Campbell Creek in McAlpine, Whitewater Center.
I think 4 Mile might be winning though, this one.
Seems that way.
Well, great. Looks like everyone's got the chat function working. So we'll go ahead and get started. So let's begin with an overview of greenways. Greenways are strips of undeveloped land near urban areas set aside for recreation use and environmental protection. We build greenway trails to activate this land into linear parks that connect people to places by linking neighborhoods, offices, parks, schools, and shopping areas. These trails provide alternative ways to move throughout our city, suburbs, and small towns, both for transportation and for recreation. Paved walking and biking trails are the #1 requested amenity by the residents of Mecklenburg County. According to citizen surveys, statistically valid citizen surveys, completed as part of our 2015 and our current 2020 master plan update. Our current master plan calls for over 300 miles of greenway trails throughout along the creeks and streams throughout the county, as well as 200 additional miles of urban trails or overland connectors, which are in the developed urban areas and along streets. Currently, more than 55 miles of greenway trails are completed with a goal to add 30 miles of new trail between 2019 and 2023. To accomplish that goal and to meet community demand, we and our partners are working on an accelerated greenway plan that includes over 40 miles of trail currently in design or construction, including this section of Irvins Creek Greenway. This is a county map that kind of shows you where some of those greenway projects are. The blue dots are projects funded through our 5-year capital improvement plan. And then the pink dots are newer projects that were funded last year, specifically for this accelerated greenway plan. The goal of this is to extend the reach of our greenway trail system, provide new connectivity for neighborhoods all throughout the county. Irvins Creek Greenway, shown on this map in orange, was funded through the county's capital improvement plan. The project will ultimately connect to the Upper McAlpine Creek and Campbell Creek Greenways, which it sounds like some of you are quite familiar with already, as I think one participant was down on McAlpine Creek this morning. It will also connect to the town of Mint Hill through future funded projects that are shown in dashed lines on this map. The black lines on the map show existing trails, and as I mentioned, the dash lines show the future trails that are currently unfunded. As you can see, kind of shown in red off to the left side of the screen, we recently completed a new 1-mile section of McAlpine Creek Greenway that extends the existing network to Providence Road. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin with Manesh to walk us through the project-specific details. Hey, Kevin. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I think I'm unmuted now. Let's try again. Thank you, Katie. The Irvins Creek Greenway project, shown in yellow, will connect Idlewild Road to Lakeview Circle, with additional points of access at Idlewild Road Park, Keziah Road, and Sam Newell Road. The green dashed lines indicate the future trail segments from our Greenway Master Plan that are not yet funded. Starting from east to west, the project will begin at the existing sidewalk on Idlewild Road. From there, it will closely parallel the north side of Irvins Creek. Throughout the project, we will plan to provide numerous overlooks to allow for resting areas and opportunities to view the creek. Due to existing wetlands and small tributaries, we will also have sections of trail that will be constructed as boardwalks. Just west of our first section of boardwalk will be an access trail to connect to the parking lot to Idlewild Road Park, closest to the playground. This connection to Idlewild Park Road will provide users access to restrooms, drinking fountains, and parking spaces. This project will include some improvements to the existing parking lot and to the trails that access the existing picnic shelters. As the trail continues west, it will continue to parallel the north side of Irvins Creek until the creek turns just north of Keziah Road. At this point, we will cross the south side of the creek and provide a connector trail to Keziah Road. This connection will provide access to the new sidewalk to be constructed along Keziah Road as part of the Four Corners development. As you can see, we plan to continue the trail under Sam Newell Road and tie into Crown Point Elementary School campus with a connection to the existing pedestrian bridge. At this point, we'll provide a connection to the existing sidewalk as well as to the future multi-use path project along Sam Newell Road that the town of Matthews is working on in conjunction with the NCDOT. Should our project budget allow, we are studying the feasibility of paving the existing gravel loop that surrounds the multi-purpose field. This photo from Little Sugar Creek Greenway shows an example of a Corten steel bridge like we will construct over Irvins Creek. While most of the trail will be asphalt, the trail surface over any new bridge will be concrete. This image shows what the trail under the bridge on Sam Newell may look like. This image is from Little Sugar Creek Greenway under Tyvola Road. By separating the trail from vehicular traffic, we can provide a more protected facility that serves all ages and abilities of people riding bike or walking. Here's an example of a recent boardwalk construction along our greenways. For minor stream crossings and for boardwalk sections, we will transition from an asphalt trail to a concrete trail surface. Finally, this is an example of wayfinding signage package that we'll use across the entire county. We have pedestrian scale signs at entrances and along the trail to indicate mile markers. At points, we will include kiosk signage to show maps, rules, and other important information. Now I'll turn the presentation back over to Katie.
Thanks, Kevin. We're excited about the opportunity to get this trail on the ground as soon as we can. Our current goal is to complete the design and permitting later this year. This allows us to finalize real estate acquisition process and start bidding sometime early next year. We hope to begin construction next spring and complete the project the following summer. While these are our target dates, please note that any delays in real estate acquisition and permitting can extend the timeline for completion. While I have your attention, I also wanted to let you know that we are working on an updated master plan for the entire park and recreation system, including greenways. This plan is called MEC Playbook. We actually invite you to join us for our third round of public meetings for MEC Playbook this coming Thursday and Saturday, September 24th and 26th. We will be discussing the work to date and seeking feedback on some big ideas for implementing the master plan. This master plan will set the vision for the next 10 to 20 years of our park and recreation system. So it's really important to have a robust amount of community feedback on making sure that we are setting the right priorities for the future investment in our parks and greenways and rec centers. There will be 3 opportunities to participate, kind of shown here on the screen. Thursday at 12 and at 6 p.m. and then Saturday at 10 a.m. And then after the meetings, you'll also have opportunity to participate similar to the Irvins Creek public input page via an online public input page that will be interactive. If you want more details about the plan, about these public meetings, please visit mecplaybook.com. With that, we're to the question and answer portion of the presentation. So I'm not sure if anyone has posted any questions yet in the chat, but this is the time that we can open up for questions if you would like to unmute yourself, or you can type your questions into the chat. And if anyone is feeling shy, I've got a couple that were submitted online that can get us started. So maybe I'll start with that one. So this question is actually, I'm gonna turn it over to Kevin to answer. There was a comment posted on the public input page that asked about trail development and impacts to the floodplain. Most of our Greenway master plan is within the floodplain. So we are quite used to developing these trails in flood prone areas. So Kevin, how are we designing and engineering this trail and how will it impact the floodplain environment?
Yeah, as part of our permit review process, we are submitting a no-rise certification. And what that means is we take the existing hydraulic model for along the creek, and then we add in the grading and the surfacing that we would do for the trail that we're proposing on our plans. And we certify that it has no impact on either upstream, downstream, or even on the properties that Mecklenburg County has. And then we submit that certification to the floodplain manager to review. So what our plans will have no impact on, the current routing of the stream. And unfortunately, it won't fix any flooding issues, but it won't have any detrimental impact either.
Thanks, Kevin. Then the next question I think is from Mark, and it says at Crown Point, does it cross back over to the north side and continue east? So I think on the screen here is shown in green. Our future currently unfunded project, we've completed a small feasibility study, and we do think at some point we will cross to the north side of Irvins Creek, somewhere around Crown Point, and then continue on down and under Independence to connect to McAlpine, if that's what you're asking. And then the next question, it seems like there is an unfunded future connection section to the Old Creek neighborhood. Is that walkable or usable before it is funded, or is there no access trail until then? Stephen, where is the Old Creek? You might have to help me orient. What roads are the Old Creek neighborhood off of? Is this towards Mint Hill or towards McAlpine? I see it. This section up here to the neighborhood on the other side of Crown Point. Okay. So that section, we will not be able to provide a connection as part of this project. It would rely on kind of the street connectivity and sidewalks to get you there at this point. But that is a connection we are studying as part of that feasibility study for the next funded section. And we do think it is important to provide connections to neighborhood streets such as that. And then from Beth, she said, just so pleased to have a connector for our side of Matthews. Currently, we need to transport our bikes to the Greenway from Lakeview Circle, and she cannot wait for the project. So thank you for sharing that, Beth. And then Mark, when is that next section? That's a great question, Mark. We hope it's very soon. As I mentioned, our capital improvement plan is typically funded in 5-year chunks. We are currently working on projects funded from fiscal year 19 through fiscal year 23. So the next funding cycle would be 2024 to 2028. And so during that, we will be evaluating projects across the entire county for funding and looking at priorities as identified through the master plan, through MEC Playbook, to kind of help guide what projects are funded there. So that would be the next opportunity for funding, and we hope that one of these projects can make it then, but we don't know yet. All right. I think I got everything in the chat. There's 2 more questions and comments that were provided online. So this next one's for Susan with the town of Matthews, if she is on. There was a question about the ability to walk on Margaret Wallace and Sam Newell. Can you provide some comments about the shared use path project on Sam Newell Road and maybe any other pedestrian improvements that the town may be working on?
Sure, thank you, Katie. So the question was about walking up to Sam Newell, or on Sam Newell and Margaret Wallace. The Sam Newell multi-use path project is on the far left of your screen, which starts kind of at this greenway at the school and heads south towards Williams Road. We have 25% design completed due to the NCDOT fiscal constraints. We are paused on that project, and we do not know when we can pick that back up. We do have a web page on the Town Matthews website dedicated to the project, so you can keep monitoring that page. As soon as we know anything, we'll be updating that page about when we can pick up and get started on that. Unfortunately, the funding only goes to Crown Point Elementary. We do not currently have any plans in development to continue up Sam Newell to Margaret Wallace at this time.
And then Susan, while you're on, Renee asked, how does this tie into the Matthews projects flyover over Independence, for example?
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is a really exciting time in this area of town as far as multimodal facilities. The staff has worked very, very hard with NCDOT project, which is the U2509 Independence Boulevard project. That does include improvements along Northeast Parkway over to Arequipa, and does include side path and sidewalk on Sam Newell. So that project will tie in with the Sam Newell multi-use path project, which will tie in with this Greenway project. So you could conceivably, if you live along the Greenway here, get on your bike and ride all the way into, pretty close into downtown Matthews via your bike, or walking. If that's your walk shed, that's great. Jog shed.
Thank you, Susan. Mark Laughlin commented in the chat that he wanted to put a plug in for the PRC and advisory councils that currently have openings and need volunteers. So if anyone on the call is interested in representing either in the Park and Recreation Commission or any one of, I believe, the 11 advisory councils, feel free to follow up with me afterwards, and I can kind of connect you to the right people. You can also find information on our website, parkandrec.com. All right, here's another general Greenway question. For the sections that are deemed future Greenway sections, does that mean that property is currently privately owned, or does the county city own those small strips of land? That's a great question, Stephen. It's a little bit of both. So we acquire property almost every day in some form or fashion across the entire county. When we go to rank projects for funding, whether or not we own some of that property or most of that property does often historically play into whether or not the project is funded, because property acquisition is one of the challenges that during the design and construction process to get from point of design to point of construction, and can add many years to a project if we don't already own the land. So we are actively trying to acquire land across our entire Greenway master plan every day that we're working, but not all sections have land acquired yet, if that helps. Bert, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll add something to that. So if you look at some of the data layers that we have available to the public through Polaris or other county GIS outlets, you will see land that the county owns, and typically if it's for Park or Greenway, it's some shade of green. What doesn't show up there yet are easements that we have on those lands. And so that gives us the ability to go and utilize that land for a Greenway or for park purposes. But the underlying land is still owned by that property owner. And so what we're doing right now is working with our group in real estate at Asset and Facility Management to create a data layer that also shows where those easements are, so that not only we as staff and our planners can visually see that and connect those dots, it's also something that's available to the public, so you know kind of where we are, and you can help kind of track the progress that we make along each Greenway corridor.
And Stephen, Brian Bennett, the project manager, just dropped a link to Polaris, which is kind of our countywide online real estate mapping application. So you can click on that and view all of the green areas that Bert just mentioned. I don't think I missed any other questions from the chat, but there was one other comment I wanted to address that was posted online. I think it might have been posted yesterday or this morning. From some of the residents one of the residents on Lakeview Circle, in terms of a concern about parking and congestion if there was increased trail parking at this location. And this person, I think, mentioned that sometimes when there's school events that people may park on Lakeview Circle, and it can cause difficulty getting in and out of their driveways. So I just want to say that, you know, we've had concerns about this from other projects as well. And what we do is often we find that the concern for this is more than the actual reality of the issue. But should we have problems in this area, there's a couple of things we can do. We can work with the town or the Department of Transportation on any kind of no parking or regulatory signage, or we can work through our wayfinding system to let people know that this road, if it causes any kind of safety concern, is not meant for parking, and then direct them to one of our designated parking areas. We will have parking for this project on Idlewild Road Park to start. Are there any additional questions? Oh, sorry. At which end of the project will construction begin? That's a great question. And Brian, you want to answer this one?
Yeah, I can take that one. Generally, that's going to be at the contractor's discretion. We'll provide multiple access points and staging, but that gets into means and methods, and we will work with our contractor once the project's bid to determine the sequence and basically which end they would start. It's potential they may start at both ends and work towards the middle, and that'll be a decision of the contractor in conjunction with coordination with the county and adjacent property owners.
And then it looks like there's a follow-up question to the parking question. Are there future parking areas already determined? We are studying some areas for future parking as well. When we work on feasibility studies for these longer sections of Greenway, thinking about maybe the projects on either end of this, we do try to identify areas for potential Greenway parking, knowing that a lot of people will access this trail via car until increased development may provide more pedestrian connectivity. So we don't have all of those areas yet, but that is something that we study as we are developing these projects.
Yeah, Katie, that's a lesson learned from past Greenway projects. A lot of our initial Greenway projects were done within residential areas. As we started adding more sections to those early projects, and then started crossing over from residential areas into areas of higher education campuses, like up at Toby Creek Greenway and UNC Charlotte, or into multiple land uses, people started using these more and more from a transportation standpoint. And then with those longer lengths, folks want to come in from places where they aren't able to bike or walk to the Greenway. And so we've made a concerted effort over the last, I'm going to say 5 to 7 years, to do a better job of increasing access to our Greenway trails from folks who aren't lucky enough to live directly adjacent to those trails, increasing the number of opportunities that we have for people to come and park, and also increasing the number of restroom facilities we have kind of along those trails. In certain circumstances, we're able to actually go in and utilize existing facilities to our advantage. And Idlewild Road Park is a really good example here, where we've got existing parking and we've got existing restrooms. And so we're able to utilize those existing assets to support not only the park, but also the Greenway in this initial phase and then in future phases as well.
Burton, kind of adding to what you're saying, locally, one of the things that'll really help maybe a little alleviate some of the local traffic, if somebody in the Lakeview Circle community wants to go see a friend in the Habersham community, or Habersham or Lakeview want to go over to the park, they can get on the trail and safely walk or bike to the trail, to the park, versus getting in a car to have to drive there. So that cuts down on a little bit of the local traffic. And with the side path along Sam Newell and having that underpass there, really will encourage people to go under Sam Newell Road and provide a really safe crossing point to use the Greenway and go to the park with having to go across Sam Newell Road, actually physically cross the road. So that should make for a much safer pedestrian travel in the area as well.
Kind of going back into the chat in case some of you aren't following the chat, there was a question about the total length of the project. And Brian responded, it's about 1.8 miles of trail, kind of if you add in some of the access trails. And then another question, and the main kind of spine of the Irvins Creek will be about a mile with some additional access trail. And then another question, are there more accesses than Keziah, noting this area is a hotspot for future development? The short answer is yes, in future. I think the access trail to Keziah, just south of that is a lot of the current development that's ongoing, which will extend the reach of that access trail through that development. And maybe Susan could talk about that possibly. And then we are working with developers as development occurs to acquire new easements for future access trails as well.
Yeah, sure, Katie, just to expand on that a little bit about the connection to Keziah, right across the street from that trail is a new single family home development. And the design team here for Irvins Creek Greenway has used the design plans from that development project to make sure that that access lines up with an access that's being provided by the developer to get across Keziah Road to get to the trail, the Greenway.
Thanks, Susan. Another question is this part of the Carolina Thread Trail plan? And the answer to that is yes. This is kind of a larger regional trail connection when you think about how this will connect into McAlpine Creek and Campbell Creek, and then one day to points further than that.
Katie, if you go back to slide 7, we've got kind of an underlay of that broader Carolina Thread Trail system shown in yellow there. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with the Carolina Thread Trail, this is a 15 county regional trail network. In Mecklenburg County, they've utilized a lot of our existing and future Greenway corridors as the same corridors that they use for this regional system. In other counties within the region, they've worked with a lot of those municipalities to begin to put trail on the ground, and that trail could be paved multi-use trail like what we're going to have with Irvins Creek Greenway here, all the way down to more narrow kind of natural surface hiking trails that you're more prone to see in a state park.
All right, another question is, the property donated by the developer of Tennyson Homes on Samuel Road and Keziah Road, will that property be used as part of this project? And I believe, are you referring to the town of Matthews owned property right there at the corner, Beth? Okay, yeah, so that is where, and I'll go back to the plan. Kind of this section here, I believe this is the property you're talking about. That is where we will have an access trail that kind of comes down and through that property.
Will that home, so I gather that home that's on that property currently will no longer be there? I mean, you'll be having other use for that, or how is that? Or will that just be demolished and that will just be part of the trail?
Susan or Corey, can you speak to that and how that's subdivided?
I punt that to Corey if he's available.
Yes, that is to be determined. We do see some potential use, and there's a storage building, I believe, on the site. But the actual home, I guess we're still evaluating and see if there's a use for it. We certainly take advantage. But if not, well, like I said, that's to be determined.
Thank you.
All right, feel free to type in some more questions if you have them. I did want to let you know that we will be posting kind of this presentation as well as kind of the slides and the script from kind of the content of the presentation to the project website, probably sometime later next week. If you would like to share this with any of your neighbors or friends and they want to review any of the content, they can continue to provide comments or ask questions on that page, or my contact information was listed on the public input page, and I'll put it back on the screen in case you need it directly. And you can always reach out to me both during this process and once construction starts if you have any questions at all.
I don't see any more questions or anything coming through. I wanted to thank Corey King, was the one that spoke up just a second ago. Corey is the director for Parks, Park Recreation and Culture. I can't remember the name of the specific name of your department, Corey, for the town of Matthews. And then I also wanted to thank County Commissioner Susan Rodriguez McDowell for joining the meeting this morning. I believe we are in District 6 here, and this is probably a project that she has been waiting to come up. Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell, did you want to say something?
Not really. I just wanted to say thank you for the work that you're doing on this, and I am really excited about this project, and I think the community is going to really enjoy it. So thank you.
Thank you. I also, because this is the first time that we've done this, and for those of you who had the opportunity to go to our public input website, we're very curious as to how this process is working for you thus far. and always looking for ways that we can improve this. I know it's not as not necessarily as engaging as a face-to-face meeting is, and we're trying to find ways to constantly kind of improve that. And so if you have any ideas or anything, drop those in the chat here, or feel free to go back and visit that publicinput.com page and provide some additional feedback there. Katie, I believe our plan is to post the presentation from today back on that page, and we may be able to reach back out to everybody who joined us today, share that link so that if they have anybody that they have in their circle of friends who wasn't able to attend, they'd be able to come and join us again.
That's correct, Bert. I'll send an email once that presentation is live on the page to everyone who either registered for this event or commented on the page. And then I believe Susan had a question. Commissioner Rodriguez-Magdal had a question about the numbers of turnout compared to in-person before COVID. That's a great question. And the best I can say, and Bert, add to this if you'd like, is that it's actually kind of comparable. It really depends on projects. We can have anywhere from 5 people to 45 people. It kind of just depends, but I was really happy with how many people registered today and were able to join us this morning. And we do feel that this virtual engagement is a great opportunity to allow the feedback to happen even post-meeting, so that those that maybe had a conflict today or couldn't join us today can have a similar experience, even if they join back sometime next week.
So Katie, do you have anything else that you wanted to share about the project?
That's it. That's all I've got.
All right.
We'll stay on for a couple more minutes in case anyone else joins in and has a question. But if you feel like you've had your question answered, feel free to take off. And we really appreciate you joining us this morning.
Mark is off to the Greenways. I think I might be off to a Greenway, maybe tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Like Katie said, we'll be on for a few more minutes in case anybody has any questions or would like to discuss anything else. Irvins Creek Greenway related or Parking Greenway related otherwise. Thank you.